Now, according to the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, the measures put in place for the current phase 2 of the ease COVID-19 lockdown shall be maintained with some adjustments. Now, some of the adjustments, according to the PTF, is maintaining the current nationwide curfew from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., the restrictions on mass gatherings with specific emphasis protecting the vulnerable populations, the gradual reopening of international air flights within established parameters, also the reopening of rail transportation within established parameters as well, the granting permission to exit classes to resume ahead of examinations, limiting government meetings to virtual as much as possible, the lifting of restrictions on outdoor communal sports, opening of recreational parks for supervised exercise, mandatory use of the non-medical face mask in public spaces, and of course the other safety protocols, the restrictions in education and the entertainment sector. Our government believes that all of these steps will help consolidate the gains made thus far and position the country to effectively overcome the pandemic going forward. Let's try to understand the epidemiology, the surveillance and the data that the PTF arrived at some of those measures. Joining us in our Lagos studio is Dr. Oluwatosin Akinshola. He's a lecturer, epidemiology, biostatistics, College of Medicine, University of Lagos. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
All right. Now, from looking at, all of those adjustments from the Presidential Task Force, do you agree with the recommendations? And this is retaining the current phase of that lockdown ease in its response.
Absolutely. I would say that we agree with the recommendation. That is the PTF, Presidential Task Force. Well, the fact is that we need to come to terms that in view of this prevalence of COVID-19 pandemic, you have to understand the fact that the issue of life and livelihood, you have to see how I can manage it too. Because looking at what is presently happening, this pandemic may not go too soon. So, and in order for us to define a way in which we can manage the life and livelihood, that is the reason why I think it's necessary to adjust this protocol by the Presidential Task Force.
But as much as we're trying to balance it, what perhaps are you seeing in terms of the trends, the trajectory of the way the virus is, especially with the daily cases that we're recording each day?
Well, for the past few weeks, let's say about 2 weeks ago, I think we actually have a downward trend a little. And for the fact that we have a downward trend, that doesn't mean that we are flattening the curve, because we cannot actually totally eradicate this condition for now, but how we can flatten it. But looking at the situation of things, we find that the government has their own role to play by enforcing all the protocols, social distancing, use of face masks. Whereas individually too, we also need to discipline ourselves. Discipline comes individually. Government alone cannot achieve it. Even if the government put all the measures in place for this disease to mitigate the effect of the disease, but individually, are we actually obeying all the protocols? Because if we are not obeying the protocols, we are nowhere to go for now.
Oh, we have joining us via Skype Dr. Zainab Mahmood, a cardiology fellow at Washington University in St. Louis. She joins us from the U.S. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Dr. Mahmood, let's look at the treatment landscape, and this is of COVID-19 around the world. What perhaps is your perception of what countries are using, and this is to ensure that people recover from COVID-19?
Right. So, as you know, COVID-19 is all new to us. So, I know a number of countries have tried several medications and trials and various methods to see what can work. And so far, what we know is nothing has been shown to specifically work against eradication of COVID-19. And the treatment has specifically really been supportive treatment, meaning getting people through the disease and trying to treat whatever complications they may have. There have been several trials. I think the most controversial one to date has been hydroxychloroquine. And really, the several trials that have occurred, randomized control trials, as we know, have not really shown any that would work. The promising ones have been remdesivir, plasma, convalescent plasma, meaning blood sample from people that have recovered from COVID have been used in trial methods to see if people with COVID can recover faster with plasma from people that have already gotten the disease. So those are really the two promising. The other ones that have been tried and have shown to work a little bit have been steroids, dexamethasone. Those are really the three, I would say, the three medications that have been shown to work around the world with some little progress.
So if we look at the non-pharmaceutical measures, which, a lot of emphasis is being placed on, the WHO is saying that the World Mask Week starts today. Would you say to a large extent that the wearing of the face mask has helped countries curtail the spread of COVID-19?
Absolutely, and I think what we need to learn is from countries that have managed to kind of so-called in quotes flatten the curve, and those are countries that have had widespread mask use from initial stages. Where the United States, we were kind of late to the game in terms of wearing face masks, but in states that have enforced state masks, we have seen improvements in the disease increase, as you know, incidents compared to other states that have been late to enforce those mandates.
All right. We'd like to thank you, Dr. Zainab Mahmood, a cardiology fellow at Washington University in St. Louis. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Doctor, we'll come back to you, especially asking you the way forward, seeing as we're also, about to start resumption of international flights. A number of people are a bit apprehensive and saying it's perhaps a little too soon. We'll come back. Let's take a break. More on the COVID-19 updates when we return. Welcome back. Good to have Dr. Oluwatosin Akishola with us. So looking at the outlook, the measures in place by the PTF, the fears of, opening up too soon, do you think that this is the right time? We just have about 11,800 cases that are still active in isolation centers across Nigeria.
Actually, the fundamental problem is not about even opening up too soon. Is that are we actually capturing all the COVID-19 carriers? That's the fundamental problem. We have some countries too who have been opening their space gradually. For example, as at June, that's about 2 months ago, the research we did, we found out that averagely, Nigeria, we are doing about our contract tracing, number of testing, about 2,300 a day. But we found out that for us to be able to capture all the COVID-19 carriers, we need to be doing about 7,200. So that is where the fundamental problem. So if actually we are not capturing all the people that are COVID-19 carriers, no matter the kind of measures, restrictions we put in place, we are still going to find it difficult to be able to nip this tracing.
In the bud.
Yes.
We appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Dr. Oluwatosin Akishola, lecturer epidemiology, biostatistics, College of Medicine, UNILAG. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.